The soundtracks that made us next on Retro Serial. Hey everyone, welcome to Retro Serial. I'm your host, Ian C. I'm so glad you'd be joining us for today's program where we're going to be talking about growing up Generation X and those soundtracks that really defined our lives. And on today's program, we have Thrashpondo Pons as well as Sundstrom. And we're just going to get straight into that interview. However, before you do that, there are some ways that you can help us out here on the channel. The first thing you can do is just subscribe to the channel. That means a lot to me. Hit the thumbs up button and also share it if you want to let other people know about the great content you're receiving here at Retro Serial. The other thing you can do if you want to go further is hit that bell notification if you want to know when these things are available so you don't miss a single episode. And also you can donate some of your hard-earned cash to both our Patreon page and our Buy Me a Coffee page, which will be in the links below. And I'm working on those right now. I know it's kind of slow moving, but trust me folks, I am working on trying to make tiers and providing special content for those who donate. But for right now, if you just want to donate to what we're doing here, if you like what we're doing here and you want to see us do it even better, please donate. If you're listening to this on podcasts, please leave us a review and a rating. Means the world to me. Also share it if you're listening on podcast. And also know always that we do have a YouTube page where there are some things on YouTube that just don't quite transfer over to audio only. So I do both. You can find this episode on YouTube, but you can also find other exclusive stuff on YouTube as well. But if you're just listening to this on audio only, I don't care. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're listening. Just please do me the favor of sharing this on your favorite social media and, review it and leave a star rating. With that all said, let's just get straight into the interview. Recording. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Retro Serial. On the phone, we have Thrashpondo Pons. How you doing, Thrashpondo?
Hello, folks. I'm doing just well. I have some typical technical problems, but I'm here and raring to go.
That's quite all right. And then also via whatever this is, Zoom this time, I have Sundstrom from his famous Sundstrom channel. How you doing, Steven?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Ian.
Good. I'm elated to have you back on the show with me for this program. Okay, so let's get right into it. Well, first of all, let everybody know about your channel and let everybody know about where they can reach you, and then we'll just jump right into today's subject. Go ahead, whoever wants to start.
Steve, after you, please.
All right. My name's Steve Sundstrom. My channel's Stephen Sundstrom. Stephen spelled with a PH in the middle. Stephen Sundstrom. My channel focuses mostly on the media, pop culture media that I grew up with during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. TV shows, movies, music, comic books, whatever it is I feel like making a video about. Just kind of jumping back in time and revisiting something from my youth. So it's a lot of fun, and I really have enjoyed getting to know other people as well. It's Ian and Thrashpondo just through the channel.
Right on. Thrash, tell us a little bit about your channel and how people.
Well, my channel is Thrashpondo Pons, and mine is too a nostalgia channel by and large. I talk about old school movies and books, usually sci-fi. That's a specialty, but I have some others as well. And lately, I've been having some very good traction with my famous top 10 list, usually on very silly subjects. And I recently got a camera for my computer, so I'm hoping to make videos of a little more polished nature as opposed to my more charmingly unpolished ones that I was making with my cell phone.
Your GarageBand type of videos that you normally do?
Literally. I make them in my garage, which I've turned into my den, otherwise known as the bridge.
Right.
And I make my GarageBand videos there.
Okay, well, I'm going to just jump right into the subject. And the subject today is soundtracks. a while back. I think it was on the last time you and I talked, Stephen. We had mentioned back then that it would be a great idea for a show to go through some of our, our most influential soundtracks. Because, I mean, quite honestly, if there are a few things that kind of define the late 70s, 80s and 90s, and even into today, it's the soundtrack. It's that movie that influenced us. But where would that movie be, without the soundtrack? You know what I'm saying? Like, where would it be? Like, where would Breakfast Club be without the soundtrack to that? So I want to talk a little bit about that today. I got some questions for both of you, and then I want to go through our lists, because I have a list as well, and I want to talk about our lists. But the first thing is that I want to know is, how important do you think a soundtrack is to the overall movie? What is your opinion on a soundtrack? I mean, what's the difference between a great soundtrack and a bad soundtrack? Why is it important to you? Stephen, go ahead and start.
Yeah, well, as you threw out the idea of doing a discussion on soundtracks, I was racking my brain because there's a lot of movies that are musicals that the music is written specifically for the movie. You think of movies like Moulin Rouge, or just The Sound of Music, and they have great soundtracks. And but there's other movies that just take songs that are already popular in pop culture and find a good place for those songs as well. But definitely a strong soundtrack really adds to the overall enjoyment of a movie. I think of like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. They bring in that 70s genre back, and they're great. They're great soundtracks, and they really make those movies awesome.
Yeah, I think it's the backbone of it as well. Like, there is a difference, and me and Thrashpondo talked about this. We kind of said, well, we're going to steer clear of like musicals and like things like The Wall or something like that. But we are going to say, like, really, like, what would Guardians of the Galaxy be without that soundtrack? I mean, it'd still be a great movie, but the soundtrack really, really makes it. Why do you think it's important, Thrash? Tell us a little bit about your opinion about soundtracks.
Well, to me, the soundtrack can be very important. Think of it this way. On a comedy, when there's a laugh track, it almost tells you when to laugh. Now, that's a little obtrusive. But the soundtrack, I mean, music makes you feel. So when you punctuate a film with important pieces of music throughout, if it's supposed to be a sad scene, the music can make it more sad. If it's adventurous, an adventurous song will heighten the sense of adventure. It really just adds flavor to whatever the spirit of the scene is.
Yeah.
It also helps capture, oftentimes, the period in history the film was made. I mean, Stephen, you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy and that epic 70s soundtrack that it had. It's really gives you a flavor of that period in American music history. When you look back at a movie, like I'm always talking about the 80s cult films, you really get a sense of the period by the music they're playing in the background, be it top 40 or even lesser known hits. There's a certain sound each decade has, and that sound can actually bring you back to the period. And so I think it's very, very influential in a good film, or it even makes a mediocre film better, shall we say.
Yeah. Well, I look at it this way, okay? So on the one side, you have like musicals or rock operas. Okay, so those are basically musicals, and kind of the story revolves around the music. The music is telling the story, that kind of a thing. On the other side of the spectrum, you have something like any normal movie that has a good sound to it, that kind of raises the tension, raises the adventure. When it's a tense scene, it's tense music. When it's a romantic scene, it's romantic music, but it's really part of the background. And then in the middle, you've got this, the film, but then it's punctuated by a soundtrack. You know what I mean? It's punctuated by a song that kind of really adds a layer to it that it wouldn't be there without it. It wouldn't survive as well. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be just like, over here where it's like Star Wars has a great soundtrack, but I don't, I'm not listening to Star Wars. I'm not plugging that into my 8-track and listening to that. You know what I mean? Some people do, or Indiana Jones or something like that. But I am, getting out the cassette tape of, say, Top Gun. You know what I mean? The
Very much so.
The music on Top Gun isn't like telling the story. It's not like a rock opera, but it's also not just the background, like an exciting, adventurous kind of thing. It's actually punctuating the film, and that actually becomes part and parcel of the film. That's kind of my idea when I'm looking and I'm listening to soundtracks. Now, here's another question I have for both of you. Or if there's any, do you want to add to any of that? Either of you want to add to that concept at all?
No, I think you hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah. So, Stephen?
No, I agree. You hit the nail on the head there.
Okay. All right. So here is my question for you. And it's a distinct memory that I have in my own life. When was the first time that you were watching a movie and you realized that, man, this is a great soundtrack? How old were you when that happened? When you kind of came to realize, man, that was a good movie, but that song, and you start singing the song at school or whatever. What was that first movie for you?
I was 11, and it was Grease.
Well, Grease doesn't count. Okay, Grease doesn't count because Grease is like a theatrical song movie. So you have to think of something else.
All right, I'll think of something else.
Steve, what do you? Steve, let's.
Well, I might be giving away soundtracks from my list.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We'll go back to that.
Definitely in the '80s, the John Hughes movies. 16 Candles. I remember the end scene, the Thompson Twins with "If You Were Here."
Yeah.
Just some great songs in that movie. So that's probably one of just those early teen movies in the '80s.
Okay. All right. Back to you, Thrashpondo.
I'm trying to think of one that isn't a Disney film, because Disney films can be good, but the music isn't really top 40. Would you accept Saturday Night Fever?
I think so.
That had a pretty good soundtrack, if you don't mind disco.
No, not at all. And I think those disco soundtracks, I think even that might have laid the groundwork for what I'm talking about as far as the soundtrack is concerned. I'm not sure.
So you do accept that one. Good.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm not sure if it does, but I'm not sure if it's like one of the first ones, but I'm just trying to rack my memory and think of an earlier kind of soundtrack than the Saturday Night Fever kind of soundtrack that fits that genre that I'm talking about. So
if I remember correctly, that was because I was something of a kid at that time, but that was the album that all the kids wanted. And usually they wanted albums like, like Bat Out of Hell or something, which wasn't associated with a specific movie. This is the first album I could think of which is directly associated with a feature film.
Right. I gotcha. Okay, so here's my second question before we get into our lists and why. So let me ask you this question: how old were you when you first bought a soundtrack, either on tape, vinyl, 8-track, whatever your jam was?
Meaning out of my own pocket, or got the money from my mother?
Either way. The first one you had
the
first one you had in your physical hands. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I'm going to go with out of my own pocket, because that means it was music so important to me. I was willing to shell out my own money to buy it, and that would have to be the heavy metal soundtrack.
Okay. All right. And Stephen, what about you?
I don't recall. I cannot answer that question.
Oh, yeah. Do you have any earlier, like your earliest memory of a soundtrack that you had?
We had the Grease soundtrack.
Yeah.
But you said, like you're saying that one, not counting Grease. But no, I don't recall. I can't recall.
Yeah. I don't know what mine was either. I'm with you on that one. I actually really, I don't recall. What I do recall is, and this isn't going to count. This is not going to count because it's a musical. But one of the first musicals that I had was Annie. And I loved Annie. I was a kid and I absolutely Absolutely loved Annie. I also loved Grease, by the way.
Yeah.
But those are more musicals. I think I would have to say that in my recollection, the first soundtrack that I think I ever really like went out and bought or owned might have been The Breakfast Club. It might have been The Breakfast Club that I actually had on tape. I'm trying to remember. I know later on I got some, like later on, and I had some, but I don't know. Okay.
I remember buying songs, the 45. So Greatest American Hero theme song.
Oh yeah.
That's like late 70s. Well, that's probably early 80s, like 81, 80.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 81.
Yeah. So I remember buying singles. I don't remember buying the soundtracks until later on when I had a job and had more money. And then I was buying so many, I couldn't tell you which was the first one.
Oh, really? How many did you have of soundtracks?
Well, I bought a lot of CDs. So we're talking in the late 80s. I've got a lot of CDs, probably over 1,000. So numerous soundtracks in there.
Well, when did you make the jump? Were you ever a cassette guy or no?
Yeah, I was a cassette guy. Trying to remember when I got my CD player. It was probably like 90. I'm trying to remember when. Is that about right? Is that about right?
Well, I know that they came out in the 80s, but nobody.
In the 80s. They were so expensive.
Yeah, they were just.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever went to a record store, and I went there to buy tapes. I was a tape guy. I had some vinyls, but I mean tapes real quickly. The big thing with tapes is they were way easier to carry. A lot of cars had tape players in them.
Walkmans.
Walkmans. They were way better than and I could buy it, and then we'd go and I'd take to a friend's house and he could copy it and stuff like that. And I remember that was the first time that I ever heard a CD, and the guy put in a CD and he was talking about like how clear it is and all this stuff. And he was going on with it. And I think it was like $300 or something like that for a CD player. And then each CD was like $20 or something like that. I don't know if you remember
Probably
the prices on that. It was crazy. It might have been even $400 for the CD player. But I remember thinking, that old Brian Regan joke, like when he's talking about $1,000 dinner, he's like, well, this is good, but it's not $1,000 dinner good, And I was thinking that same thing about CDs. I was just like, it does sound better, but does it sound $400 better? I was like, no, I didn't think so. So you were late. So you were early in the game going to CDs, Steve.
I don't know if that was early. Like I said, like probably around 1990.
Yeah. That would be early to me. Thrash, you as well. When did you switch over to CDs?
I think to be honest, I never really did. I was a purist. I just preferred vinyl and, of course, cassette tapes. I think when I first got out of college, I think my roommate had a DVD player, a CD player rather. And so what I did was I started getting CDs out of necessity because no one was making vinyl and cassette anymore, and I could actually play them on his player. So I'm guessing that would have been 93, 94. So I was definitely a holdout. In fact, I still have in what I refer to as my Harry Potter room, because it's under the stairs going to the downstairs level, I have a crate, mind you, of old cassette tapes, which I just don't have the heart to throw away.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a bunch of them too. We actually dug some out. I was still buying tape players. I was still buying tapes even into 2000, quite honestly. I mean, I was listening to CDs as well, but I was buying tapes even into 2000s. I remember that because I had a tape player in my car for the longest time. And I don't know. Let's see. Well, definitely by 2000s, I was buying CDs. But there's a long transition period over. I mean, a long transition period over from listening to tapes and then listening to CDs. And it wasn't until my tape player in my car broke down, and I almost skipped the whole CD thing. I still had a ton of them, but I almost skipped the whole CD thing and went straight to MP3 because I didn't have that many CDs. I went from like tape to a lot of CDs, but not like my main staple, and then over into MP3. All right. way off the subject, way off the. As a matter of fact, let's see. I've got a couple of tapes right here. These are pretty old. My Bloody Valentine, and a
Wow,
band
82?
a band called Lifesavers. Now I think My Bloody Valentine is a little bit. I think those were '90s. I'm not sure.
Oh,
Lifesavers. I don't know if you ever listened to that band, but they're free on YouTube. Go look that up. Huntington Beach Lifesavers. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal. I can't believe why it's not more popular. All right. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get to our list, okay? And we're just going to do a countdown. We're going to talk about why, why it ranks, what it means to you. And this was difficult for me because not only did I have to think of things that had great soundtracks, but I also, because there were a couple on there that like they had great soundtracks, but like the movie wasn't as important to me. So it was like both kind of a thing for me. It was just like the movie had to be really important and it had to have a good soundtrack. Okay, so I will go ahead and start with Steven. Go ahead and mention your number 5.
Well, I'm actually going to do these not in order of my favorite.
Okay.
I love them all, but I'm doing them in order from when the earliest movie to the latest movie.
Okay.
And I'm going to start, the earliest movie there was from 1984. It's a movie called Teachers. Has Nick Nolte and Ralph Macchio in it. And it's got a great soundtrack, including a song called Teacher, Teacher by 38 Special. And then Foolin' Around by Freddie Mercury. And a song called Teacher by Ian Hunter. If you're familiar with who Ian Hunter is, from Mott the Hoople. Wrote Cleveland Rocks, you know that song? That was one of his songs.
Oh, yeah.
And All the Young Dudes. So it's got a great soundtrack. It's a fun movie. And it's very 80s. And then probably the strongest track in my mind from it is a Joe Cocker song called Edge of a Dream. And Joe Cocker's got an amazing voice. So that would be my first pick is the Teacher's soundtrack, which I don't think it's available on a digital download anywhere. I haven't seen it on like iTunes. But if you go out to YouTube, you can just type in Teacher's soundtrack and people have put together a list of all the songs.
Yeah. I remember that movie. I don't really remember the soundtrack a whole lot, but I do. And I don't remember it being famous, which is kind of odd for me. But I do remember the movie. That was a fantastic movie. It really was. And I remember that one part in that movie where somebody falsely pulled a fire alarm. Yes. And they said, well, one feature is basically like giving up, and he said half of these kids won't even come back from this fire alarm. And Nick Nolte, the character, said, well, but half will, and it was one of those struggles. So great movie. And those are obviously great songs that I remember, but I just, for some reason, they're just not in my mind as far as being on the soundtrack. Thrashpondo, did you want to say something about this?
Oh, just I remember the movie. It was excellent. The Crispin Glover had that tragic character in that very sad scene, which is sadly all too topical these days. And I do remember the soundtrack. I remember it was getting some pretty substantial airplay on MTV when MTV still played music. So yes, I can definitely see that as a valid addition to anyone's top 5 list.
Yes. Okay. All right, Thrash. Let me hear your top 5. Your fifth in this.
Well, I too am going to recite them in no particular order, and I'm going to start with the one I've already given away, the heavy metal soundtrack. I've always been a fan of animated feature films, and heavy metal is arguably the best one ever made. I mean, granted, it's a series of vignettes, but they all just come together excellently. I loved Heavy Metal Magazine in my youth. I would love it today, presumably, if I could still find it. And I thought it had one of the best compilations of soundtracks of all time. Riggs, Sammy Hagar. There's an excellent, almost power ballad by Stevie Nicks. There's only one song on the entire album I don't particularly care for, and it's by Donald Fagen, who I actually think the world of. Steely Dan's one of my favorite groups of all time, but it's something called True Companion. and it just simply doesn't fit with the rest of them. But I just thought that other than that, the album just really came together, and I listened to it so often, I've actually had to replace it not once, but twice, just because the tape literally just gave out in my Walkman or player. So I almost think of heavy metal as of the soundtrack as there was before heavy metal and after heavy metal, at least as far as my musical experience.
Can I jump in? I should have included that as my first pick because it is on my list, and it did come before Teachers. And you're right, Thrashpondo. It's a great soundtrack, and probably one of my favorite songs from that is the song "Reach Out" by Cheap Trick.
Oh yeah,
it's fantastic. It's not on any of their albums, but it's a fantastic song.
Yeah. Well, I'm striking zeros here because those are both like I knew about heavy metal so that was one of those things, like I knew about that movie Heavy Metal when I was a kid, and people talked about it, but like I couldn't watch it. You know what I mean? I mean, you had to get it at a video store. Number one, it wasn't on HBO, and we had HBO when I was a kid, but it wasn't on HBO, and it was just one of those movies that my friends would talk about, but I could never watch it. And then just in all my growing up years, I've not really seen it. You know, I've not really looked at it. I've not really, I've seen clips of it. So, and I know it's iconic, and I know I need to go back and watch that one. I'm going to put that on my list.
It's definitely worth going back in. And the thing is, I think it might have not been readily available even on video, because I think there were some legal issues keeping it like the soundtrack. I don't think was released until like 95. So like 14 years after the movie came out, because of the legal issues with, I'm not sure if it's just the copyright issues for the songs or whatever reason, but it was a long delay.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the movie was made at a time where the musical options were a gray area. So after the movie came out, there was some disputes as to who had the rights to what. And that's why and I actually talk about this later on, just as a side note, there were a lot of great soundtracks out there, but for whatever reason are missing some of the best songs that were in the movie. And it was because they simply couldn't get the rights to them. The Stones were famous for that. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but in Full Metal Jacket, they play Paint It Black during the ending credits, and it's the perfect cap-off to the soundtrack. But the Rolling Stones would not give the rights to it. So when the soundtrack came out, it wasn't on there. And I thought it sort of, let's just say it deflated the value of the soundtrack, for me at least.
Yikes. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I am going to tell you my fifth one, and I did rank these.
Okay.
And for me, anyway, it was tough, but I have to say that coming in at number 5 for me was Pretty in Pink. I thought it would have gotten higher because I did love the movie, but I didn't love the movie the way I loved the soundtrack, and I didn't love the movie the way, and it didn't have the impact on me that some of these other ones had. So I mean, it had In Excess on there, and I was a huge In Excess fan when I was a kid, and I still am a huge In Excess fan, by the way. I mean, I think they're a great band. I even like their new stuff. I don't know if you ever saw, they had that competition show a while back on The Next Rock Star, where they were trying to find a new lead singer for NXS, and the guy that they chose actually did a really good job. And I think he was only there for one album, but he did a really, really good job. They were able to make some new material with him, and I thought he did good. But of course, I was a huge Michael Hutchence fan, and anything with him in it is gold for me. So I really do like In Excess a lot, but they had all kinds of songs on Pretty in Pink, and for that I do think that it just deserves to be in the top 5 for me. Anybody else's thoughts on Pretty in Pink? Go ahead.
I can certainly see where you would like it. I wasn't a huge fan of that soundtrack myself, but for people who like, I can certainly see why people would have added it to their list. So yes.
Very new wavy. It was new wave. You're going to find a little bit of a trend here to some degree with what I like as far as soundtracks were concerned, and my life at the time. So, all right. So that was the next one for me. Steve, please give us another one.
All right. From 1985, The Breakfast Club, the soundtrack you mentioned up front. Most of the music for the soundtrack was written by Keith Forsey, including the big hit from the movie, which was "Don't You Forget About Me" from Simple Minds, Scottish band, and it was probably their biggest hit. They had other hits, but it's a song they didn't write. Keith Forsey did write it, but in addition to that, there's a great song by Wang Chung in there called "Fire in the Twilight." And then there's a song by Carla DeVito called "We Are Not Alone." Carla DeVito, Thrashpondo, you mentioned Meatloaf. She was the gal in the video for
Dashboard Lights.
Paradise by the Dashboard Lights. So she's got a great voice. Her and her husband, Robbie Benson, if you guys remember Robbie Benson, an actor from the 70s, they wrote that song. The song is called "We Are Not Alone." Yeah. So
oh, wow.
It's got a great soundtrack. But that final song where they're leaving and the "Don't You Forget About Me" comes on is just great.
Yeah. And I have to admit too that that "Don't You Forget About Me" is an iconic song. And I was going to actually, that's probably for me one of my honorable mentions, and it didn't make it on my list, of course, but it is an honorable mention. And the reason why it didn't make it on my list is, well, there's just other ones that edged it out, some weird ones, but I'm going to get to that edged it out. But there were a lot of stuff on that soundtrack that was just kind of like the music background to it. You know what I mean? But man, that song, "Don't You Forget About Me," that's one of the most iconic, I think when people think about soundtracks, that's one of the first images that come into people's head. There's a couple more images, which I'm going to get to in a bit, that come to people's head when you think about great songs in movies. But I love that. I loved that movie.
When remembering the 80s, the first song that comes to mind is "Don't You Forget About Me." It is literally it is the hallmark of the 80s. It is almost like the sign-off. And the 80s were a very culturally specific decade. I mean, it really has its own feel to it. And whenever I look back and think about the 80s, I think, "Don't you forget about me," because Lord knows I can't forget the 80s if I wanted to. And hope never to.
Yes, right on. All right. Next one for you, Thrash.
Me? Yeah. Wonderful. This one, I'm always talking about my cult films. This one is 1971's Harold and Maude, which I'm sure many people have never seen, possibly never heard of. But it has a wonderful soundtrack by Cat Stevens, who is one of my favorite musical artists from that period. Has some of his great stuff, "Where Would the Children Play?" I Wish, If You Want to Sing Out, Sing Out, and many, many more. It's basically like if they took a Cat Stevens album and made a cult film around it. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ruth Gordon. She's in it. She's amazing. And Bud Cort, who these days is probably best known for playing God in the movie Dogma. But anyway, it's a very, very interesting film, and I think it had a very nice soundtrack.
Bud Cort, Ian.
Bud Cort.
Bud Cort, yeah. Did you ever see the movie Dogma?
A long time ago, but I thought Alyssa, or not Alyssa Milano, that girl that's...
yeah, she plays when God comes back. Because remember, God is taken out by the demon street hockey players in the beginning?
Yeah.
The old man who plays the old man taken out by the street hockey demons in the beginning, that's Bud Cort. And when he comes back as Oh, the irony song girl.
Yeah.
Alanis Morissette.
Alanis Morissette, yeah.
Alanis Morissette, yes.
Alanis Morissette. I knew I'd get it.
Alanis Morissette. Okay, all right. Any thoughts on that one, Stephen, before we move on?
I've seen the movie a long time ago. It is a good movie. I remember Bud Cort. He's in MASH, the movie version of MASH.
Very good. Yes, he is.
And but I couldn't tell you anything about the soundtrack, so I'm gonna have to go back and check it out because I also like Cat Stevens.
Yeah, I love Cat Stevens.
A lot of the tracks are on YouTube.
All right, I am going to go with my number 4, and that is Say Anything. Okay, so Say Anything.
Ooh,
that has another kind of iconic scene when you're thinking of when you're actually thinking of songs in the 80s or in a soundtrack. There's a couple images that come to mind. One of them is the Don't You Forget About Me. Another one is I don't think I'm going to take anybody's place away, but you had already mentioned it, is Saturday Night Fever, when he's walking down the street and, they're playing that song. That's kind of another one when you think about great songs and great movies. But the other one that's iconic is in Say Anything, when he's playing the Peter Gabriel song outside the door and he's holding up the boom box. So I actually loved that movie. I'm a huge John Cusack fan. And I just think that soundtrack, not just that song, but there were lots of songs on there that were great. Thoughts, gentlemen, thoughts.
It was an excellent soundtrack, and I'm ashamed I didn't think of it.
I think I know what Steven thinks about it, but let's hear it from him.
Yeah, well, it's also on my list.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. The obviously the In Your Eyes, Peter Gabriel song, it's iconic. Like you said, Lloyd Dobler, John Cusack holding that jukebox up, or not jukebox, boombox. But
jukebox would be heavy.
That would be a little heavy.
He's there's the song, I think it's called All for Love by Nancy Wilson from Heart.
Yep.
Which is one of the final songs. And she's got such a great voice. And the movie's a Cameron Crowe movie. And he was married to Nancy Wilson at the time. So that's what I'm sure how she was involved in the soundtrack. But that probably is one of my favorite songs is All for Love. And then it's got a great song by the Replacements in there as well. Called Within Your Reach, which was probably the first song that I really fell in love with from the Replacements. So they've got a great discography, and Say Anything. It's a fantastic soundtrack.
Yes, it is. I actually really love that soundtrack, and a huge John Hughes fan, John Cusack fan as well. But the other thing in that movie was kind of the original songs that girl was singing while she said, "That'll never be me. That'll never be me." Remember that one? That didn't make it onto the soundtrack, but I loved it in the show. I thought it was just fantastic. I thought she was a great character. So anyway, she's been in a few John Cusack movies. That actual girl has been in a few of them. Yeah,
I do think there's a hidden track on the end, at least on the end of the CD, which is the Lloyd Dobler rap, that they do. No. I think when he's standing, when he goes to the mini mart and he's out there and there's all those guys leaning against the fence.
Yeah.
I think there's some guys that do a Lloyd Dobler rap. I think that's on the soundtrack. Hidden track.
I remember that. And then the other thing, it's a great movie because the other thing that I remember about that is the kickboxing in it, because I'm a big martial arts fan. And that's one of the reasons I really look up to John Cusack is because he's in martial arts. That's in there too. So, that's just a great film all around. And of course the soundtrack just puts it over the top. The soundtrack, that's a great movie, but let's face it, the soundtrack makes it iconic.
Yes.
Indeed.
All right. Now give me another one, Stephen. We'll just go down the road here.
Yeah, my next one was Pretty in Pink. Also, you covered that. The title song by Psychedelic Furs is amazing. But one of my favorite songs on there is "Left of Center" by Suzanne Vega.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
she's got Joe Jackson playing piano or keyboards along with her in that song, and it's a fantastic song. And then the end sequence with OMD and their hit song. What's the song they play at the very end of the movie?
If you leave, don't leave. Is
Yeah,
that it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Touch
that
me
song.
once, I mean, I won't give up at any price.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Oh,
Well,
yeah,
let's not
yeah.
sing
If
it.
you know it,
It's called "If You Leave," I believe.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
not sing
all right,
it.
yeah.
I'll get
yeah.
flagged by.
Demonetized.
Yeah, well, I don't have any monetization as of yet, but I will get flagged. But we'll do that soon. All right, Thrash.
Here's the deal, Ian. The John Hughes movies, those first ones before he switched to making kid movies like Home Alone.
Yeah.
So we talk about 16 Candles, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Pretty in Pink, and Some Kind of Wonderful. They all were fantastic. They had fantastic soundtracks. It just resonated with us, at least me, and I think a lot of kids during the 80s. And he really knew how to get people on board. They would, he didn't pick the soundtrack himself. He hired people to do that, and they picked songs that influenced a whole generation.
He was brilliant at it for sure. Yeah. I mean, whoever he chose, he was brilliant at choosing people who were brilliant at it.
Yep,
that's for sure. All right, what's the next one, Thrash?
I went with, because I have a thing for nostalgia, particularly for things I haven't been around for. I went with The Big Chill.
Oh.
I absolutely adore that soundtrack. I've always been into like old Motown, and it's also peppered with a lot of other sounds. Three Dog Night, The Rascals, CCR. It really captured the period in which, of course, the movie was, of course, made in the mid-'80s, but it's all about the early 70s. So one can watch it now and get nostalgic about nostalgia. But, yeah, I think it really did a great cross-section of what the music sound was from the early 70s, particularly one of my favorite songs from that period, The Wait by The Band.
Yeah, good one. Good, yeah, good. All right, really another one of those, sorry to say it, but really another one of those movies that wasn't on my list. Wasn't on my list to watch. So no. I don't know what you think, Steve, but it really wasn't.
I haven't seen The Right Stuff. I need to see that one. I know it's a really good movie.
No, he said you didn't say The Right Stuff. You said what did you say?
Oh, The Big Chill.
The Big Chill.
Oh, The Big Chill. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the wrong one in my mind.
That's all right. wasn't really a fan. I'd seen the movie, so the soundtrack wouldn't have been all that daunting to me. Okay, so but so let me just say that this next one, I am going to be surprised if anybody has even thought about it, because talk about a movie that really a niche audience is going to like, but it's in my top 3, and that is The Last Dragon. I love the movie, and I loved the soundtrack. As cheesy as the movie was, and as cheesy as the soundtrack was, I thought it was great. I love
The Last Dragon. It's a great movie.
Oh yeah,
sure enough.
Yeah,
it's a great movie, and I think it had a very solid soundtrack. So no, I can. Again, I'm a bit surprised I didn't think of it myself, but no, I can see why you would have added that.
It's got great music in it, and that really. I know that probably that wasn't the first one that I ever bought or anything like that, but I think that was like one of the first times that I ever was like thinking to myself, man, that music is as good as the movie. I mean, I'm going to watch the movie, but I'm also really enjoying listening to the music, because it's even the cheesy. Steven, did you ever see that movie or no?
I didn't know.
Oh, okay. It's super cheesy, but even the cheesy songs in it, like that girl who was doing the videos and they were trying to get it played on The Seventh Heaven, I thought her songs were really good as well too.
Wasn't that Berry Gordy's first and only attempt to make a feature film?
It might have been. It might have been. I mean, I don't know
I believe it was.
I don't know that much about the backdrop to that.
And I believe DeBarge was at the time his son-in-law.
Oh, really?
That married either his daughter or his niece, which is why DeBarge just happened to make the cameo in the film.
Well, he deserved it. It was a great song. It was a great song.
Oh no, it was. But I remember when I first saw it, I go, "How did they get him?" And I go, "Oh, that's how they got him." His father-in-law made a phone call, or uncle-in-law, something-in-law.
Yeah, and Vanity was in it, and her song in it was terrific. And it's a fun 80s martial arts film that has a lot of breakdancing and kind of somewhere between breakdancing music and, I don't know, new wave music, something like that. So really encourage you to watch it, Steve. It's funny. It's a funny show.
Check that out for sure.
It's a lot of fun. It's an 80s cult classic.
All right. I'm going to start this time. I think I kind of doubled up on some of your list there, Steve. So I don't know if you have another one out there or not, but I'll save it. I'll save it for last. I'll work this way now. Still put Thrashpondo. So this is going to be one, and this is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated soundtracks out there that I absolutely love the soundtrack, but it's really not on too many people's lists. And that is Better Off Dead. I thought Better Off Dead had an amazing soundtrack. I forgot the people's names who were on it and stuff like that. I was just looking at it, but it had that girl from singing, Better Off Dead Than to Live Without You, who was also on Friends at one time, made a cameo on Friends, and she was also in Valley Girl, and a lot
Streets of Fire. She was in Streets of Fire too. She played Baby
Elizabeth
Doll.
Daly.
Yeah. Elizabeth,
Give the man a cigar.
That's right, Elizabeth Daly. And then plus, the song that he played when he was in the restaurant, that slower song that he played for her, I thought that was a really good song as well. The song is just, the movie is just punctuated by a terrific soundtrack, and I don't think it gets enough credit. All right. Well, let me ask you this question. I do want to ask you this question overall. Let me ask you this question. On your lists that you have in front of you, I know we're not done with them, so you might be getting to it, but on the list that you have so far, what's the one soundtrack that you think's the most underrated?
Underrated?
Yeah, underrated. Like, how come people aren't listening to this? You might not have one. I mean, that's okay. I mean,
For me, I would probably say Teachers. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what you mentioned, it sounds like it has a great soundtrack, and I haven't heard it. So, I knew some of those songs, but I mean, that's an underrated soundtrack for sure. And I feel the same way about Better Off Dead. I mean, Better Off Dead is a terrific soundtrack. I mean, it's an album on its own. It's an album on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll say Streets of Fire.
Streets of Fire.
Streets of Fire. That's it's almost like an alternate universe. It's like the 50s if it was done by in a Hopper painting. What happens is this guy gets out of the army and he goes to see his girlfriend, who is a pop singer. She gets kidnapped by a motorcycle gang whose leader is an obsessed fan, and he puts together a ragtag team to try to rescue her. Deborah Van Valkenburg is in it. We just talked about Elizabeth Daly. It has that song, No More Counting. I Can Dream About You.
Oh, yeah.
It also has an iconic song done by Meatloaf, sung by Diane Lane. It's
Nowhere Fast.
Nowhere Fast. I spaced for a second. She does a rendition of Nowhere Fast, which is outstanding.
Yeah.
And it has a really, really good soundtrack. And I think because the movie didn't do particularly stellar, I mean, people know one or two tracks from it, but they don't really know the full album, and it's a pity because it was great.
Yeah. All right.
That is one of my favorite soundtracks. I should have thought about including that, Thrashpondo. Jim Steinman wrote those two. There's two songs that were Jim Steinman. Steinman wrote all the songs for Meatloaf for the most part. So Bat Out of Hell is a Jim Steinman, penned album. And he wrote that song Nowhere Fast, and I think there's another one called Tonight Is What It Means to Be Young.
Yes. Again, give the man another cigar.
And then that song I Can Dream About You, and then there's a song by The Fix on that soundtrack called Deeper and Deeper, which is really good as well.
Wow. You know your stuff, Steven, when it comes to movie soundtracks. I'm telling you, this is incredible.
You really
awesome.
do. You really do.
That's a great movie. And well, it's not a great movie. It's a fun movie, and it's a great soundtrack.
Another one I got to put on the list to watch as far as movies are concerned. All right, I'm going to go. Let's go ahead and do top pick. If you have any, I haven't revealed my top pick yet. So if you have a top pick, let me know what it is, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay, Steve, you want to go first, or?
I thought I did all 5. I did 5. I thought I've done 5, but maybe
okay. So I know that I said some, and he said some that kind of got some of yours. So I think that if you've done all 5, then that's cool.
I
was going to include, and I didn't include it, but The Secret of My Success. Fox movie. I love the soundtrack from that. It's got a great Pat Benatar song, and it's also got the song "The Secret of My Success" by Night Ranger, which is one of my favorite Night Ranger songs.
Yeah, I get it. What did Night Ranger? Were they the band that sang "Sister Christian"?
Yes, they were.
Yes.
All right, so yes, I remember that. I remember them. I don't know too many Night Ranger songs, so I know "Secret of My Success" and I know "Sister Christian," but I know that they were a great band. They were one of those bands that was kind of classified arena rock, if I recall. You know, like Loverboy and Night Ranger and REO Speedwagon, and probably the most iconic of that kind of music would have been Journey. Then they kind of all come together like that's all kind of the same kind of rock music. Yeah, I didn't know it was them. I do remember Secret of My Success, huge Michael J. Fox fan, and loved Secret of My Success. Do you have a number one pick for us, Thrashpondo?
I'm going to, believe it or not, I only have one. We have Guardians of the Galaxy, which we already covered. So that was one of my picks as well. So I'm just going to gloss over that. And my top pick, I'm going to make the Pulp Fiction soundtrack.
The Pulp Fiction soundtrack.
The Pulp Fiction soundtrack. Tarantino always manages to come up with great music for his movies. And it's got a great cross-section of music in it. It's got a great song, Stay Together by Al Green. It's got some old, vintage rock. Got some old funk, Strawberry Number 23. It has that very famous guitar riff, the rumble, that dun dun dun, which has been in a number of things, but I'm in love with, and I just think it's a really, really, really solid album to a really fun action flick.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think, Steve?
It's a great soundtrack. You know, the thing about Tarantino and his sound, he does pick great soundtracks, but sometimes a movie can actually ruin a song for me. If you remember, in the movie Reservoir Dogs, there's a scene where they've got this cop they've captured, and the one guy's torturing the cop, and he cuts off one of his ears, and he's singing to him that song "Stuck in the Middle with You."
Oh yeah,
Steelers Wheel.
Yeah, and now every time I hear that song, that pops in my head. I'm like, So that's just a testament to the power of songs in a movie and how they can connect you to the movie.
Yeah,
I can see that. I see that.
I can see how that could ruin it for you. I haven't seen Reservoir Dogs. Not really a huge fan of Quentin Tarantino, although there are some that I do. When I really like it, like Pulp Fiction. I really did like.
As a martial arts guy, if you haven't seen the Kill Bill movies, those are fantastic.
I've definitely seen the Kill Bill ones. They are really good. Those are the ones.
Well, you would love it for the martial arts, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Let's see. So I'm going to give you my number one, and I'm going to be interested to see, because this actually was a very influential film. It borders on a type of movie that I don't really watch that much of, but I loved the movie, and I love the soundtrack, and it's my favorite type of music for one, and it's one of the most compelling movies of that generation, and that is The Crow. I absolutely loved The Crow. The bands on that, I mean, first of all, The Cure. I mean, look. I mean, does any other band matter really? No, I'm kidding. I know that you do, but I mean, The Cure is they're definitely one of the best bands ever. And then also, of course, they had Nine Inch Nails on there, which was super popular at the time. The whole soundtrack. They had a Ministry song on there. A lot of people don't know about the band Ministry, but I was a fan of the band Ministry. And then they had a song on there from one of my all-time favorite bands, and that is the Jesus and the Mary Chain. I thought that the song on there from the Jesus and Mary Chain was incredible, and I think the entire album is credible, as well as the the movie. Your thoughts on that?
Oh no, because of your affiliation with martial arts, I wasn't quite as big a fan of the film The Crow as you were, but I did recall from watching it, it did have a very solid soundtrack. Because I wasn't a huge fan of the film, I didn't see that adding it to mine, but I can certainly see there's certainly enough good material on there to make it worthy of a top list.
Yeah.
It's a good soundtrack. I thought about including it as well. The song "Burn" by The Cure, it really stands out. It's such a great song. And then there's a Violent Femmes song in there. I think "Color Me Once."
Yep.
Really, really good.
I'm another big Violent Femmes fan too. Yeah, that's great. All right. Yeah. Okay, let me ask you this question here. Do you think there's any soundtracks out there that kind of are overrated by any degree? Do you think there's some that are like, oh man, that's a little too overrated for me?
That's a good question, because all the soundtracks that get a lot of airplay, I think, are good. So I will tell you one thing, and don't hate me for this, because as we have discussed the importance of this song. I do think some songs are oversaturated on soundtracks. Like when I was doing my research, I was going to put The Wanderers, or I was thinking about adding The Wanderers, but a lot of the songs on it were already on other soundtracks. So I think there might be an oversaturation of redundant music out there, but I can't think of any soundtracks that are overplayed.
What used to bug me, and I'll let you chime in on this, Stephen. I think maybe this is it really used to bug me, really, when people wouldn't like a band, but would like the soundtrack. Like I like them both. Like, don't misunderstand me. Like, I'm a soundtrack guy. We're talking about. I love it. But when you get these, I was just because I was so into music when I was a kid, and you'd get these people, and they'd be like, "Oh man, I really like that soundtrack," and they'd name like the Thompson Twins on it, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, the Thompson Twins, they're really good," and they'd be like, they wouldn't know anything else about the Thompson Twins than that. So that would be like, what? You're a phony. Get out of here. I don't want to talk to you.
Poser.
Yeah, you're a poser. That actually really bugged me. So I love soundtracks, but in a way, it's just like, and it gets people exposed to music, but I have that kind of guarded underground music appreciation. That's like, listen, if you can't name the deep tracks on that album for me, as well as the popular stuff, or at least one other song by these people, then you can get out of here, man. So that's something that kind of actually bugged me about soundtracks as well.
I can definitely see that. And you know who's guilty of perpetuating that are the radio stations. Like, for one of my personal favorite examples is, I'll be like driving somewhere, I have the radio on, and they'll be like, after the commercial break, we'll be playing a song by the Kinks. And I'll be, please don't be Lola. Please don't be Lola. And of course, it's Lola. And I'm like, they recorded for 30 years more. They have more than one hit. Play something else by them.
Right.
And, I can name a half dozen off the top of my head. But they never play their old classics. Sunday Afternoon or Victoria. I'm like, you could play something from their catalog. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's part of the problem, is that you got the top 40 listeners, I used to refer to them as. They have a very limited band of music they listen to.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Stephen?
I agree with both of your sentiments on that.
I used to ask people too, like one of the first things I ask people when I'm talking to them, I'm like, well, I was like, so tell me some of your CDs. Like if I was open your CD box, your tape box, what kind of bands would I see? And it used to always bug me when they would be like, oh, I don't really have any CDs. I just listen to the radio. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, if it's not on the radio, I don't want to listen to it. I'm like, what are you talking about? I can't communicate with you. I mean, music is such a big part of my life, So
yeah,
anyway.
There's definitely those people that just, it's more out of whatever's on. They're good with it. Just go with the flow. And then there's those people that are so passionate about it that they want to get the albums, read the liner notes. Who produced this album? Who are the artists on it? Did somebody in the band change?
And they'd know about it.
We were talking about Meatloaf a minute ago, and of course, one of, if not my favorite Meatloaf album is, of course, Bat Out of Hell. And I only recently found out that cover art was done by my favorite comic book artist of all time, Richard Corbin. Yes. And I've decided that I couldn't have just learned that. I must have known that 30, 35 years ago and forgotten, because there's no way I could not have known that. But yes, you're right. You don't just listen to music. You read the notes about it. You know who did the artwork for it, for the covers. You know who did background vocals on track 4. Music is more than simply listening to cool tunes. There's an art behind it.
If that's one of your favorite albums, Thrashpondo, as I mentioned, Jim Steinman wrote all the songs, all the music.
He sure did. We just lost him recently, R.I.P. Mr. Steinman.
Yes, but he had a solo album that was supposed to be the second Bat Out of Hell album. The solo album's called Bad for Good. Bad for Good. It's fantastic. You should check it out. You can get it on iTunes or probably buy it off Amazon.
That's very interesting. I'll have to listen to that. I know that I know that there was a Bat Out of Hell too.
Yeah, but the original one was going to be Bad for Good, and he just recorded it himself. It's under the name Jim Steinman.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Learn something new every day.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, hey, when we're all talking, we all learn from each other. That's the great thing. I mean, we pull a collective here. All right, so we are going to move into now. The last 2 times you were on the show, Stephen, you were not privy to this. So I'm going to let Thrashpondo go first, not to shock you. But in light of the fact that we've only got one blockbuster, and you only have to do this one time, okay? If you've done it before already, you don't have to do it again. But you weren't here for this. So I have a new segment of the show. It's the final segment closeout, and it's called Favorite Video Store Memories. And if I remember to do it. So I don't want you to be put on the spot. I'll let that cook a little bit. As somebody who has been in the video store industry, Thrashpondo's got a number of them. So Thrashpondo, I'm going to go ahead and let you start your favorite video store memories. You go right ahead.
Okay. And again, I think the first 2 have both been from when I was working in the store. So I should probably give one from when I was actually a customer.
Okay.
And I'm actually stalling for time because I can't think of a good one.
Oh,
to be honest, you know what the best store-related store I can think of right now is?
No.
Is actually, when I wasn't in the store at all, I was actually at a national convention for the chain I was working at. And I remember Austin Powers 2 had just come out. And everybody on the planet wanted Vern Troyer's autograph because he and Michael York were doing an autograph signing. And I'm like, oh, no. I want to go get Michael York's autograph. I have been a fan of his since I was like 6 years old. He was D'Artagnan in The Three Musketeers. And so I kind of grew up with Michael York being a fan of his. So I go over, I get his autograph, and then I'm like, you know what the heck? I'm going to go get Vern Troyer's too. The line was kind of dissipating by this point. And it was so funny because people, they get starstruck when they go to these events, and they always think they're going to say something, nice to the person. It's always just, I'm your biggest fan, which is more off-putting than anything else. But I just as I was getting on, and it was so cute, he was actually standing on a chair to sign the autographs, leaning across the table. He's signing autographs, and everyone's like, big fan, yeah, thanks, big fan, yeah, thanks. And as I get up to him, Shasta McNasty, the very short-lived show with Jake Busey, had just been renewed for a second season. And as he's giving my autograph, I go, hey, congratulations on season number 2 of the show. And he kind of perked up, and he's like, well, thanks. Like, he didn't realize anybody would actually have something supportive to say. Yeah. And I always felt as though, gee, I made Vernon Troyer's day. Good for you, Bob.
Oh, good. All right. I'll share one real quickly. I have a whole collection of my video store memories, but I'll break them apart here. And I'll tell you the title of this one is a video store almost put me on a milk carton. Yes, the video store almost put me on a milk carton. I was getting my hair cut. My mother dropped me off at one of those hair colleges. And right next to the hair college was a video store. And I was supposed to get my hair cut and then wait for my mother to come pick me up. And I was probably about 9 years old. Well, being the curious lad that I was, I couldn't resist but to go into the video store, thinking the whole time, hey, I'll just keep an ear out for my mom. I mean, it's just right next door. I'll be able to watch her, see her go in. But of course, in all these video stores, they have this video playing. Well, my 10-year-old, 8-year-old, whatever mind got wrapped in this, in whatever they were playing. And I totally missed my mom. And I had to go find her. And she was calling everybody, searching everybody, thinking the absolute worst. I think I found her probably about 3 hours later, but that's how a video store almost put me on a milk carton. All right, Stephen, do you have any? I don't
have a story that quite that exciting, Ian, but I do have fond memories of going to the video store. I remember before VHS was really the main thing. We had a video disc player for those, not a laser disc player, but a video disc player. It was kind of like a record. You had to slide it in. You'd play the first half of the movie. Then you had to slide the disc in and flip it. And it had like a needle that would go down. It could get scratches on it. And I remember going up to the video rental store in our town. It was just a little independent shop called Video USA. And going up there with my parents and walking around and looking at all the movies and just being fascinated with the idea you could rent a movie for a few days, take it home and watch it as many times as you wanted. And that's where some of the movies I are my favorite movies today come from. I didn't see them in the theater. I saw them on video disc.
Yeah.
And I loved going up there. You just sit there for 30 or 40 minutes just walking around looking at all the movies.
All right. Yeah. It was great. It's just part of our life growing up, Generation X or beyond as well, and before. Stephen, tell people where they can find you one more time.
Stephen Sundstrom. Last name is spelled Sundstrom. Stephen Sundstrom is just the name of my channel.
It's a great channel, by the way. Everybody go and check it
Very
out.
Very good.
Thrashpondo. Tell everybody.
I can be found at Thrashpondo Pons. That's capital THRASHPONDO, capital PONS. And you can find me there, or more likely, with my good friend ENC.
And it's a great channel as well. I enjoy the dad jokes, Thrashpondo.
Oh, Steve, thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
I use them.
I hope we'll have more very, very soon if I can finally figure the technical problems.
Yes. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Thrashpondo, for being on the program today. Really means a lot to me. It was the first time that I've ever had 3 people on a podcast. So that's going to be interesting. I know that's not like, it's not like hey, this is the first time we've been to space or something, but you know what I mean? It was challenging. Nonetheless, it was challenging. Thanks. Thanks
for you.
Thanks everyone for joining us on today's program. If you're listening to this on audio only, please know that we have a YouTube channel. And if you like what we're doing here, you're going to love what we're doing over there. Go and check it out. But if you're listening to this on audio only, please leave a review and a star rating. It would mean the world to me. Also, if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the button, hit the like button, hit the thumbs up button. And if you didn't like this, you can go ahead and hit the thumbs down button 2 times, and that will let me know that you didn't like it. Also, what can you do to support us? I have the Buy Me a Coffee page, as well as a Patreon page. And on my Patreon page right now, I'm getting it set up. I'm going to be doing tiers so that there'll be special stuff. It's a little daunting for me right now, but I'm working on it. I want to do the best job I can do for you people. And I'm going to have tiers of cereal. So like Cinnamon Toast Crunch is going to be tier number 1, and Cookie Crisp is going to be tier number 2. And and so you can be part of the club. You can be part of the Cookie Crisp club and get the special insider stuff from and early releases and stuff like that. But I'm working on it. It's not right away. All right. With all that said, thanks again, everyone. Stay retro. Glad you could all be with us today, and share it on your favorite social media. Oh yeah, that's the last thing. All right. Take care.